where it looks to be headed now. The new concerns this morning for a life-threatening storm surge up the East Coast. Florida's governor ordering the first evacuations. People stockpiling supplies.
Frustrations mounting as residents anticipate shortages.
Fuel is an issue.
Gas stations running dry across the state.
Every pump you go to has lines and lines.
Store shelves emptied. President Trump declaring an emergency, ordering federal assistance ahead of the monster storm.
It's one of the biggest hurricanes we've seen in a long time.
We have live team coverage on the ground with the latest track of the storm.
Also this morning, suspicious deaths. Families demanding answers after as many as 11 veterans died at this hospital in West Virginia under suspicious circumstances.
We need answers, and the family needs answers.
The investigation this morning.
Pitcher's death. New details about how LA Angels star Tyler Skaggs died. This morning, his family shocked.
As we observe a moment of silence.
What they and the team are saying about the findings.
And celebrating the life of Valerie Harper.
I'm very pleased you got a big part in the play.
The longtime TV star, best known as Rhoda, on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Tributes from fans and co-stars pouring in this morning.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Let's get right to our top story. Hurricane Dorian barreling toward the East Coast right now. Take a look at the satellite imagery. This storm is a beast, strengthening overnight. It is now a Category 4 with winds up to 140 miles an hour.
The big development this morning, the forecast models now predict that Dorian will probably not make landfall in Florida. Instead, the storm may make landfall further north in the Carolinas. However, and this is important, even if the current forecast model holds, that does not mean Florida can fully exhale.
Also, bear in mind here that when it grazes the coast, Dorian is expected to bring a significant storm surge, which could mean flooding and property damage. This morning, with the storm bearing down, Floridians are scrambling to stock up on gas and other supplies, which are running low. We have team coverage, and we start with Rob, who's on the ground in Cocoa Beach. Rob, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. This is not the Labor Day weekend that folks here were hoping for. Tourists are getting out. Residents are preparing their families, their homes for what may come. This part of Florida landscape is complex. I want to show you our drone shot. There's water pretty much everywhere. Waterways and rivers intertwined just inland here from Cocoa Beach. Meanwhile, another scenic and tranquil sunrise coming up on this Saturday morning, all while a monster hurricane looms in the Atlantic.
This morning, Hurricane Dorian, a major Category 4 storm marching towards the southeast U.S., with Florida set to get it first. The governor urging locals to heed any calls for evacuation.
There is a danger to your life if you remain in these evacuation zones.
Brevard and Martin counties already announcing mandatory evacuations for the barrier islands, low-lying properties, and mobile homes starting Sunday morning, with more evacuation orders expected over the weekend.
I'm tired.
Eileen White and her husband making a 6-hour drive from Florida to Georgia to dodge the storm.
It's hard for older people to leave, and Florida's filled with old people. Just say some prayers for us, please.
It's pretty chaotic out there. I'm glad I prepared last weekend.
Dorian's winds could cut power for millions of customers in Florida. More than 16,000 work crews from Florida Power and Light on the way to help.
The damage will require extended repair work. And in extreme cases, it may require FP&L to rebuild parts of the system here in Florida.
Shops and homes throughout the state boarding up. Containers and umbrellas and lounges moved off the beaches. For what is typically a major travel weekend to Florida, the Daytona Beach International Airport Terminal closing Sunday. Orlando International Airport to cease commercial flights starting Monday. Dorian forecast to bring life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds. The famed hurricane hunters tasked with gathering vital information inside the storm, speaking to ABC News.
The initial prognosis of the storm was that this was going to be a tropical storm and not much more, and we're already up to a Cat 4 at this point in time, so it's growing, it's intensifying, it's a big storm. Don't overlook it.
They have been flying nonstop through this storm, and that data is helping us get some better forecast accuracy, at least we hope. This drone showing just how much water is surrounding this place. We're on a sliver of land that connects the barrier islands, including Cape Canaveral, to the mainland. And those barrier islands have been ordered to evacuate beginning tomorrow morning, because where I stand right now may very well be underwater with the combination of the wind, the storm surge, and what is unfortunately timing out to be astronomically high tide. So that is not a good combination, regardless of if this thing makes landfall or not. But it is a beast. I want to show it to you on the satellite picture. Anytime I look at something like this, when you have an eye like that on the infrared picture, it does, to me, look like a monster, and it just gives me chills up my spine, especially when you see a track that comes this close to the U.S. Category 4 storm with winds potentially getting closer to Category 5 status. It's going over very warm water. The Bahamas are obviously going to get it first. They have hurricane warnings up there. And the track or the pattern remains the same. That high pressure is what's nudging it to the west. Here are some of our computer models. But now there's indications that the western edge of that ridge is going to weaken, and that will open the door for Dorian to make a right turn to the north a little sooner than we once thought. That is a good scenario, at least for South Florida and for inland areas of Florida, because look at the computer model winds guidance here. This is a stark difference from what this particular model was showing us yesterday. It was showing us 110-mile-an-hour winds expected in West Palm Beach, about half that now expected if this forecast holds true. If it comes 50 miles either direction to the west, then we're talking about a whole nother ballgame. So the margin of error is very small with this sort of trajectory. And obviously Savannah, Hilton Head, and Charleston are going to have to worry about this midweek with life-threatening storm surge, hurricane-force winds, and heavy flooding rains. This story is not going away, unfortunately, for the folks here in the southeast U.S. Eva?
All right, a lot of people anxiously watching that this morning. Thanks, Rob. Well, Dorian is making its move towards the Bahamas right now, and people there getting ready for a direct hit with this storm. ABC's Marcus Moore is in Marsh Harbor for us this morning. Good morning, Marcus.
Well, Eva, good morning. They are on high alert here in this part of the Bahamas, where, as you just mentioned, they're preparing for a possible direct hit. And we could begin to feel the effects of Dorian in the next few hours. In fact, they'll be shutting down the airport later today and a number of the businesses that have been open over concern for this storm. And we have seen an urgent effort to prepare. People boarding up their homes and businesses here on this island. And we saw a frenzied scene inside one of the grocery stores where dozens of people have their shopping carts full of food and supplies as they prepare for this dangerous hurricane. And it is worth noting that there are evacuation orders in place because the storm surge could reach as high as 15 feet here in this area. So they are anticipating a dangerous storm. And one of the things the Prime Minister said is that people need not be foolish. They need to take this storm seriously. Dan?
Marcus, thank you very much. Marcus Moore on the ground in the Bahamas. Meanwhile, there is also a mad dash this morning to fill up on gas and stockpile on necessities in Florida, and that is leaving store shelves and gas pumps in that state empty. The Florida Highway Patrol is now being used to escort fuel trucks to areas that need it, and ABC's Gio Benitez is right there in Miami with that part of the story. Gio, good morning to you.
Hey, Dan, good morning. Listen, finding a gas station with gas and without lines, well, that's just a needle in a haystack. And this morning, we are learning that more and more gas stations are just out of gas. Frustration rising among Florida residents as they prepare for Hurricane Dorian. In some places, lines of cars stretching down entire roads.
Every pump you go to has lines and lines.
No more. This gas station owner waving off drivers, telling them the day's 7,000 gallons are gone. Governor DeSantis acknowledging the shortage.
Fuel is an issue. There's gas stations that have run out of fuel.
As of this morning, at least 6 counties in Dorian's path saying their pumps have nearly run dry, with more than half of their supply already gone. Miami-Fort Lauderdale hit the hardest. 72% of their gas stations are without fuel this morning. I'm looking for gas myself, but at the stations with no lines, well, that's because the pumps are covered up. They've run out of gas. The Florida Highway Patrol now escorting tankers, bringing in more fuel. We've also seen long lines forming at Florida stores as shelves across the state are emptying out. People scrambling to stock up on last-minute supplies.
I came for water and some gas tanks. We waited till the last minute, so hopefully we could get something.
Residents also taking precautions to minimize any potential flooding in their homes once Dorian arrives. All of these cars in line are waiting for this, bags of sand. Each household gets 6 bags of sand, the city of Miami giving it away for free. Gabriel Velasquez, who was here during Hurricane Irma in 2017, is preparing for what's to come. Even though the storm's days away,
you got to be ready no matter what.
And officials here want you to make sure that you're looking at that full cone of uncertainty, because if this decides to change, if that path decides to change, yet again, they don't want people caught off guard. So prepare as if this storm were coming directly your way. Eva?
All right, good advice there this morning, Gio. Well, storm surge and flooding is a big concern along most of the coast, including in Jacksonville, which was hit hard by Hurricane Irma 2 years ago. That's where ABC's Kaylee Hartung is joining us now. Kaylee, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eva. This is the St. Johns River. It's the longest river in Florida, and it dumps into the Atlantic here in Jacksonville. It's an important shipping channel, but as a storm approaches, it also poses a tremendous threat. 2 years ago, as you mentioned, Hurricane Irma storm surge sent the waters of the Atlantic into this river, and then they flowed into downtown Jacksonville behind me, and here on the other banks into the San Marco area. This is not a commercial area. This is a place where people live. This retaining wall, it's new. It's been rebuilt and raised because Irma destroyed what was here before. Residents on this street, they tell me this street can flood with a heavy downpour of rain. Now, even though Hurricane Irma's eye came more than 70 miles from here, I'm told that water came up just below the first floor window of this home. Some of the homes on this street had to be gutted, finishing their renovations a matter of months ago. People here familiar with the threat they could face, and Jacksonville's mayor is reminding everyone here they can't tune out this storm. Whit.
Everybody's got to be prepared. Kaylee Hartung for us. Thank you. President Trump, meanwhile, is monitoring developments with Hurricane Dorian this morning after expressing his concern about just how damaging it might be. ABC's Rachel Scott is at the White House with what the president is saying. Rachel, good morning.
Whit, good morning to you. Well, President Trump said this storm looks like it could be an absolute monster. The president was supposed to be heading to Poland this weekend to commemorate the beginning of World War II, the anniversary there. Instead, the president scrapping his international plans to keep a close eye on this storm. And he'll be doing that not from here at the White House today, but from Camp David. He has an advisor traveling with him that will give him up-to-date information on this storm and its path. He has a briefing on the books for later this afternoon, and the president has continued to say that his biggest concern and priority here is the safety of residents. But something that will also likely cross the president's mind during these briefings is his own property. The president has multiple real estate properties in the state of Florida, including Mar-a-Lago, which is a frequent stop for the president during the winter months. And yesterday he told reporters it could be at risk.
Mar-a-Lago is dead center, but look, Mar-a-Lago can handle itself. That's a very powerful place. The thing I'm worried about is the state of Florida, because this hurricane is looking like this could be a record-setting hurricane. Now, maybe things change.
And the president will return from Camp David tomorrow and head directly to FEMA headquarters, where he will have a meeting. He will continue to defer to local officials for any additional evacuations, but he said more decisions can expect to be made after that meeting tomorrow. Eva?
All right, Rachel Scott for us there at the White House. Joining us now from FEMA headquarters in Washington is Associate Administrator for Response and Recovery, Jeffrey Beyer. Now, the path of this storm keeps shifting. It's moving along Florida and now possibly turning up toward the Carolinas. That is a much bigger area of coastline to be watching. How does this new path change how your teams are preparing to deal with this storm?
Yes, ma'am. First and foremost, thank you for having us. You're a very vital part of our team in emergency management and emergency response. So just as you said, the coastline is expanded, so we want to make sure that those residents in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina are definitely starting to make their preparatory actions. However, we don't want the citizens of Florida to lose sight of the cone of uncertainty that the storm presents. And even if it skirts the coastline, as current forecasts have it. This is going to create a lot of rain, wind, and damage all through Florida. So, you know, we have to keep our eye on Florida, and from the federal level, we start moving teams. We already have teams in Georgia. We'll start putting response assets and teams in South Carolina and North Carolina. So, although it's bigger, we will be prepared for any impacts that Hurricane Dorian presents.
This is a powerful storm. I heard Rob call it a monster storm and sending shivers up his spine. With a storm like this, what are you most concerned about?
You know, we have, you know, at FEMA, our job is to be concerned with everything. So, you know, the list that I get concerned about is pretty long, but that's what I'm paid to do. So our most and largest concern is that citizens are not paying attention. Or they don't take these storms like this serious, or if that skinny black line is not you know, forecasted to come over their house, they feel like they're out of the danger area, and that can be deadly. You know, a lot of rain, a lot of flooding, a lot of inland flooding, everything that can you know, happen in a hurricane, this storm will have it. So, you know, our biggest concern is that the messages are not getting out, or people begin to get complacent because there's been a track shift, or again, that skinny black line is not going over their house. So that's why I go back to how much we're appreciative of the media and just a very important job that you do of getting this message out to this wide range of coastline and our citizens.
And a good reminder to everyone in that cone of uncertainty to heed these warnings. Jeffrey Byer,
Yes,
thank you so much for joining us this morning.
No question about it. Let's get back to Rob Marciano, who's in Cocoa Beach, Florida, watching all of this. And Rob, as you've been pointing out, even if this doesn't make landfall, still a glancing blow can cause significant damage.
Oh, we saw that with Hurricane Matthew just 3 years ago. Could be very well a similar track again. Anyway, any deviation 50 miles either way of that skinny black line that we spoke of, it will mean the world of difference. So you got to focus more on the cone as we go through time here. Here's a satellite picture again. You can see a couple of things with this. One, obviously, a very distinct eye. The other is that the front side of it is not as symmetrical as the backside as far as the strength goes. So that's good, in that it's not in a hugely strengthening mode right now. But hurricane warnings are posted for the Bahamas, and hurricane watches for the southern Bahamas as well, for big-time storm surge and obviously destructive winds as this Cat 4 rolls through there during the day tomorrow. When will you feel those tropical storm force winds? Well, here on the Florida Peninsula, tomorrow afternoon is probably when they're going to start to come in. That's 39 miles an hour or above. That's when they shut down airports, they shut down the bridges. Monday morning, a little closer to Jacksonville, and then getting up towards Georgia and South Carolina going into Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's where we'll see a significant storm surge and heavy rainfall, flooding rains across much of the southeast corner of the U.S. This is going to impact a huge area, including some big waves that will do some damage too. That's a check on what's happening Dorian-wise. Here now is a look at your local forecast.
Well, hello and good morning, Washington. Latest on Hurricane Dorian as of 5 o'clock this morning. You see 140-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds, Category 4 storm expected to remain and keep that intensity northern Bahamas, eventually taking a track in a more northerly course there by Wednesday and Thursday. May actually impact the southeastern coast here by Thursday and Friday of next week. Now, this weekend here, partly cloudy skies, temperatures into the upper 80s, mid-80s on your Sunday. Chance for a few storms Sunday and Monday afternoon.
The mood here in Florida is shifting somewhat in the last 12 hours from like a team getting beat badly in a basketball game to the momentum swinging late game, potentially seeing some victory here if this thing were to take the track it's trending towards, which would be offshore. Of course, the game is far from over, so we'll continue to update you throughout this show and the weekend. Guys, back up to you.
Not a time for people in Florida to become less vigilant. Rob, thank you for hammering that point home and for leading our coverage this morning. We'll come back to you in the second half hour. Meanwhile, we switch gears a little bit.
We've got a lot to cover and a lot of changes in the wee hours of this morning with the last model run. Let's get right to it. Here are the stats. Dorian now, a very dangerous Category 4 storm located 470 miles east of West Palm Beach, Florida, with maximum winds up to 140 miles per hour, moving to the west-northwest at about 12 miles per hour. So a slight pickup in speed. It is going to wobble most likely in speed and perhaps intensity over the next 24 24 hours. Its next sites are on the Bahamas right now, where hurricane warnings are in effect for the northern islands. The Bahamas itself under a hurricane watch. This will continue to advance towards the coastline of the southeast. So let's track it together. Where is it headed? Well, with the latest modeling, it begins to turn to the north and the east as it heads towards that South Florida shoreline. Perhaps this storm may actually parallel the coast of Florida, never making landfall, but its effects will be felt. As this modeling works, it winds up with its eye passing somewhere between Savannah and Charleston as late as Thursday morning, with maximum winds of 110 miles per hour. Now, this does not mean Florida is out of the danger zone by any stretch of the imagination. So for residents watching throughout the peninsula, you must be careful, you must stay aware, and listen to your municipal authorities. What kind of effects are we looking at as this storm continues to move on through? Catastrophic winds potentially over the Bahamas as we roll into Sunday. And as they get the worst, the effects will begin to be felt through Florida, from Miami all the way up to Jacksonville as we roll through. And keep in mind, we could see tropical storm force gusts through Sunday. And as we roll into the beginning of the week and the storm passes through, the northwest Bahamas could see as much as 25 inches of rain in isolated areas and significant rainfall up and down the eastern seaboard, up to and including the Carolinas. There's a lot going on and still so many questions. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Dave, thanks. We'll check back in with you in a few minutes.
Millions of Americans are in the crosshairs of Dorian. Florida residents are bracing for this hurricane's arrival, with some places already announcing new mandatory evacuations set to take place as early as tomorrow. The storm's also creating a potential travel nightmare on this busy Labor Day holiday weekend. NBC's Kathy Park is in Indian Harbor Beach in Florida for us. Kathy, good morning.
Peter, good morning to you. With warnings that this could be a multi-day storm, residents have been rushing to secure their homes as well as stock up. Here in Brevard County, mandatory evacuation orders begin at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning in some areas, but already some businesses plan on shutting down today.
This morning, Hurricane Dorian churning and intensifying in the open waters of the southern Atlantic. The slow-moving storm, nearly the size of Ohio and expected to get bigger. But the pace of preparations only picking up in Florida, with the entire state in the danger zone. Brevard County announcing late Friday it will initiate mandatory evacuations starting Sunday morning.
While I know that no one likes to leave their home, I really believe in my heart that given the current forecast, this is the best course of action to take to keep everyone absolutely safe.
The one thing that's been pretty certain is that this thing's been getting stronger very consistently.
The last Category 4 hurricane to hit Florida's east coast was Andrew in '92, which was blamed for 44 deaths. Officials in Georgia declaring emergencies in at least 12 counties, the Bahamas bracing too. Boats secured, homes boarded up, stores jammed with residents rushing to get ready.
We have other fans, we have lots of food, we have the generator, we have 15 gallons of gas.
In Melbourne, people waited at least 4 hours for 10 sandbags per car.
I'd rather be safe than sorry, so I'd rather wait for the 4.5 hours. You know, my life is more important.
At the hurricane headquarters of Florida Power and Light, teams are planning for post-storm damage.
Crews coming from 34 states and Canada.
On this big holiday weekend, travelers are scrambling to make alternate plans.
We're going to be gone before it even thinks about hitting.
Airports will be closing Sunday or Monday. But a bright spot ahead of the potential doom of Dorian.
Now pronounce you my wife and then now kiss your bride.
A new bride and groom weathering the storm together.
Breaking news as we come on the air for the West Coast. A deadly shooting spree in central Texas. 5 are dead, the gunman 2.
They have an active shooter at Home Depot.
At least 21 are injured after the suspect opened fire at random motorists on the highway. Gaining strength, Hurricane Dorian now getting bigger, stronger, and heading toward even more states.
Don't make any assumptions, remain vigilant, and be prepared.
The Bahamas bracing for a direct hit within hours. 911 call backlash, a drowning woman's desperate plea for help, and the operator's shocking response.
I'm scared. I've never had anything like this happen to me before.
Well, this will teach you next time. Don't drive in the water.
What police are saying about it now. Price hikes. New tariffs on China go into place tonight. The price you pay about to go up on everything from diapers to tools to bikes and even your Labor Day barbecue. And challenge accepted. The Ice Bucket Challenge. Millions of Americans got in on the action. Now the amazing result of all that cold cash.
This is NBC Nightly News with Jose Diaz-Balart.
Good evening, I'm Peter Alexander in tonight for Jose, and we begin with a shooting spree near Odessa, Texas. 5 people are dead, 21 injured following a traffic stop. Police say the suspect shot a trooper, then sped off, firing at people on the highway. He has since been killed by officers. Ron Allen is joining us now. Ron, what more do we know?
What a terrifying and crazy afternoon. This is a very dense area. A lot of this happened near a shopping mall on a busy state highway. According to police, it started with a traffic stop. The state trooper pulled over a motorist for unknown reasons. The gunman opens fire on the officer, takes off, and then starts firing randomly at people on the highway. At some point, he ditches his car and hijacks a mail van, a postal van, and continues his rampage. Throughout the afternoon, there are reports of 2 gunmen, 3 gunmen, several cars involved. It all turns out to be just one suspect who's cornered near a movie theater. There's a gun battle, and the police essentially kill him right there. Here's what the authorities had to say about the casualties.
This subject was contacted by law enforcement, and an exchange of gunfire happened, and that subject is deceased at that location. We have law enforcement injured. We have the DPS trooper in Midland County. We have 1 MPD officer and 1 OPD officer that were struck. As far as civilian casualties, we have at least 21 victims, 21 shooting victims, and at least 5 deceased at this point in time.
So you heard there, several police officers, a state trooper, other local officers from Odessa and Midland were injured in this hail of gunfire that went on for perhaps an hour or so. And remember, all this is happening some 300 miles from El Paso, where 3 weeks ago, a gunman opened fire and killed at least 20 people in a Walmart. So an area on edge, another shooting rampage in America. Police don't know exactly what set this guy off, but the bottom line is that they caught him, they cornered him, and they shot him dead. Peter?
All right, a terrifying scene. We will continue to monitor it. Ron Allen, thank you very much. Now to our other big story tonight, Hurricane Dorian. It keeps strengthening. Now an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm, 500 miles across, packing 150-mile-an-hour winds. The latest forecast showing this powerful hurricane veering away from Florida, but the state is not out of the woods yet. And the new track could put Georgia and the Carolinas in the crosshairs. The immediate concern, the Bahamas, bracing for a direct hit. The Prime Minister warning, if you wait this evening to find safety, it's too late. We have our team positioned across the storm zone, but we begin with WNBC meteorologist Maria.
Well, indeed, it's too late because by this time tomorrow, the Bahamas turn to feel the wrath of Dorian. Right now, a strong Category 4 storm, 150-mile-per-hour winds moving to the west at about 8 miles per hour. By tomorrow evening, early on Monday, moving over the Bahamas and staying there for 12 hours as a Category 4 storm, and where it then is expected to take that turn to the north and then the east, putting in its crosshairs the Georgia coast, the South Carolina, and the North Carolina coast as we get from Tuesday through Thursday. So we have the warnings up for the Bahamas. Newest, those tropical storm watches for parts of the east coast of Florida for those conditions deteriorating as we get into Monday. High probability of those strong winds, but Peter, also heavy torrential rainfall to the west of that path as we get into next week.
All right, Maria, thank you very much. And despite that new path farther to the east, officials in Florida are warning residents that Dorian is a very serious storm that could still hit a big part of that state. Gabe Gutierrez is in Martin County, Florida, for us tonight. Gabe, what are officials there saying?
Peter, good evening. Parts of Florida are now under tropical storm watch. Florida's governor is urging residents to remain vigilant. Here in Martin County, mandatory evacuations were set to begin tomorrow, but late today, authorities canceled them as the threat from Dorian rapidly changes.
Tonight, a dramatic shift in the forecast. Hurricane Dorian now expected to just scrape Florida's Atlantic coast.
Looks like a monster to me.
Today, from gas to groceries, a run on supplies as the storm intensified. In Stuart, Florida, anxiety measured in sandbags. Just ask Jennifer Cross.
How worried are you that it's still going to flood?
I'm still worried.
Despite the unpredictable forecast, many of the people waiting in this line say they are expecting a lot of rain. And since many of them live in low-lying areas, they're not taking any chances. The Florida Keys, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale are now out of the storm's expected path, but authorities warn most of the Sunshine State remains in the dreaded cone of uncertainty.
Don't make any assumptions. Remain vigilant and be prepared.
The White House says FEMA is briefing the president every hour. Florida Power and Light is pre-positioning 18,000 workers, bracing for extensive outages.
Even if Florida doesn't take a direct impact, we're expecting impacts like significant storm surge and potential flooding.
Cruises out of Port Canaveral canceled starting tomorrow. Many airlines are waiving change fees, as property owners like Dick Jones hope for the best.
Just in case it turns the other way, you got to be ready.
And Gabe, you've been on the ground there all day. Is it your sense that most people are taking this threat seriously?
Well, Peter, I have to say there's been a significant change here in the last 12 hours or so. Millions of people on Florida's East Coast went to bed last night expecting a catastrophic storm. And now, while there is some relief for South Florida, authorities are quick to point out that most of the state is not out of the woods yet, Peter.
While wind is a major concern, the rain, flooding, and storm surge could swamp that low-lying island chain. Morgan Chesky is in Nassau for us tonight. Morgan, what's the mood like? What's it like on the island right now?
Yeah, Peter, right now people are keeping an incredibly close eye on Dorian's path because any shift could make a drastic difference. As it stands right now, Abaco Island and Grand Bahama stands to get the brunt of Dorian's force as it makes its way through. And you mentioned that storm surge. We're talking about 12 to 15 feet in certain areas, and those sustained winds of anywhere from 120 to 150 miles an hour. The Prime Minister issuing a dire warning earlier, telling anyone in low-lying areas to get out if they can. Meanwhile, I spoke to the commander of a local search and rescue operation, and he tells me they've pre-positioned certain supplies in order to have easy access to them should they need it when Dorian moves through. But he says no matter how many hurricanes you go through, it never gets any easier. Peter?
Morgan Chesky in the Bahamas tonight. Morgan, stay safe. Now to the president. One of his most trusted employees is out of a job after comments that she made about the first family got back to him.
Breaking news as we come on the air tonight, a mass shooting in Texas. A gunman randomly opening fire, killing 5 people. 21 others are reported injured.
Get out, get out, get out.
Hurricane Dorian now a dangerous Category 4 storm. As Dorian's intensity grows, so does anxiety over where and when it'll strike. We have the very latest. Also tonight, fiery protests. Chaos again on the streets of Hong Kong. Protesters set fire to their own barricades as China ramps up its response. Outrage at the 911 dispatcher who scolded a drowning woman making this desperate call.
I'm gonna die. It's all the way up to my windows. I'm gonna die.
And in our Eye on Earth series, the Joshua Tree. Are soaring temperatures killing off a national treasure?
This is the CBS Weekend News.
I'm Rena 9, and we begin tonight with breaking news and another mass shooting in America. It happened in Texas, where a white male in his mid-30s went on a shooting rampage after being pulled over during a routine traffic stop between the cities of Midland and Odessa. 5 people were killed, 21 others hurt. Several of them are police officers. The gunman was shot and killed by police. Kenneth Craig has the latest.
Witnesses captured police rushing to the scene on their cell phones after reports of an active shooter along the highway in West Texas. Odessa Police Chief Michael Girk says it all began when a state trooper tried to stop a man in his mid-30s driving a gold Honda.
When the DPS troopers got the car stopped, he was then shot by the occupant of the car.
Police say the traffic stop erupted in gunfire when the suspect shot the trooper and took off.
At some point, the subject stole a mail truck, ditched his car, and There were other victims after that.
Odessa police reported the shooting started in Midland, making its way to nearby Odessa with the suspect randomly shooting at people along the highway. Photos on social media captured vehicles with shattered windows. Authorities confirmed 21 victims were left in the shooter's trail and 5 people were killed. As the frantic search for the suspect unfolded,
Jay, we probably need to go.
We can see this?
Jay, we probably need to get off the air.
anchors from our affiliate KOSA were forced to leave the set while on air,
okay, we're gonna leave the setup.
then evacuate the Music City Mall where their studio is located.
There's a shooting going on in Odessa.
Police say they shot and killed the suspect at a nearby entertainment complex.
Oh, he hit the barrier!
But they are still unclear what motivated the man to carry out the horrific attack. Kenneth Craig, CBS News, New York.
Hurricane Dorian is gaining strength in the Atlantic and becoming a growing threat for millions of Americans. From space, you can see the massive Category 4 storm, now more than 200 miles wide. Dorian is expected to devastate the Bahamas tomorrow, while southeastern Florida is now under a tropical storm watch. Still, Dorian's path remains hard to predict. Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli joins us now. Jeff, why is this so hard to predict?
It's because the steering winds are not very strong. In fact, they're so weak that they're hard to predict, and any small change in the atmosphere makes the system very vulnerable to changes in its track, and that's what we're seeing. Here is the latest advisory on the storm. As we zoom in, we'll show you how strong the system is. And it is literally a classic textbook storm, perfectly circular. It's almost a Cat 5, but not quite. We'll put the stats up for you. Winds 150 miles an hour. Moving fairly slowly at 8 miles an hour, it's going to slow down to a crawl. We'll put the National Hurricane Center track up, and as you notice, moves west. It really slows down over the Bahamas, and because of it, they're asking people to evacuate the northern Bahamas. We're going to see at least a couple of days of really bad conditions there. Creeps up the eastern seaboard. Looks like the hurricane force winds probably remain offshore. It's a close call, but tropical storm force wind gusts are likely on the northeast coast of Florida. Then the system heads towards the Carolinas. Where does it go exactly? We are not sure, but it could very well make landfall somewhere in South or especially North Carolina near the coastline. So let's sum it up now. Today's newest model stayed the course from the earlier models today. The storm's going to stall and then turn northward up the southeast coast, what we know for sure. Huge battering waves, very rough surf, the possibility of coastal flooding. Some of the waves offshore could be as much as 50 feet high.
That's incredibly high. Jeff Baradelli, thank you very much for joining us. Well, tonight, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina have declared states of emergency ahead of the storm. Along Florida's east coast, people are busy filling sandbags in anticipation of flash flooding. Maria Villarreal reports tonight from Cocoa Beach.
Businesses are shutting down and families are packing up. State and local leaders are all giving the same message.
Don't take down your shutters, not just yet.
To people living all along the southeastern Atlantic coast.
We want to ensure that there's no lost lives or, casualties as a part of this storm or any storm coming in.
Don't let your guard down.
We are not out of the woods yet.
There's still a possibility the massive storm could hit beachfront communities like Cocoa Beach. It's supposed to be one of their busiest weekends of the year. City Manager Jim McKnight is working closely with first responders to secure the town.
The businesses and, more importantly, the service industry, those in hospitality, whatever you have, those people will suffer. And that really is something that is concerning. And so it's very disappointing for those people, and I know the community always steps up and helps as much as they can.
Across Florida, food and supplies are running low as the lines to fuel up continue to grow. Homeowners are hunkering down even if they don't take a direct hit.
All kinds of damage, windows broken, trees down, so you never know.
Normally, this beach would be packed on a Saturday afternoon on Labor Day weekend, but thousands have already left the island. The county was actually planning to issue a mandatory evacuation starting Sunday morning at 8 a.m. But you know what, Rena? That has been delayed, just like Hurricane Dorian's arrival.
Maria Villarreal, thank you very much, Maria. And we want to remind you, you can keep track of Hurricane Dorian all weekend long with our CBS News app, or you can also log on to cbsnews.com.